Okay, buckle up, because today we are diving deep into the world of non-thinking
Hmm.
with Joseph Nguyen's book, Don't Believe Everything You Think.
Oh, yeah.
I have to say, the title alone had me hooked.
It's certainly a provocative one.
It is.
And while it might sound a little counterintuitive,
Yeah.
especially for those of us who pride ourselves on our active minds,
Right.
Nguyen's exploration of non-thinking is anything but passive.
You're telling me it's not about becoming mindless zombies, thankfully,
Thankfully.
which I'll admit was my initial worry.
Right.
Nguyen is actually tackling something much more profound.
Mm-hmm.
How to tap into a different kind of mental space where creativity and joy can flourish.
Exactly. See, Nguyen makes a key distinction between thoughts, those fleeting sparks of mental energy that just are,
Yeah.
and thinking, which is what we do with those thoughts.
Okay.
The analyzing, judging, overthinking part.
Right.
And his argument is that it's in the thinking that we often get tripped up,
Okay.
creating unnecessary suffering.
So kind of like the difference between noticing a thought floating by
Yes,
versus grabbing onto it and letting it take you on a wild ride.
precisely. It's like the difference between a single note on a piano,
Yeah.
a pure sound,
Yeah.
and, well, accidentally sitting on the entire keyboard.
Yeah.
One is music, the other is just noise.
Ouch. Been there.
Yes.
Felt that.
Yes.
So is he saying that those aha moments, those bursts of inspiration,
Yes.
happen when we're not stuck in our heads?
That's precisely what Nguyen suggests.
Okay.
He argues that our most inspired work, our moments of greatest joy, often emerge when we're not bogged down by that mental chatter.
Okay.
Think about a time you were fully absorbed in a favorite hobby. You lose track of time, you're fully present,
Right.
operating from a place of pure instinct and intuition.
Okay. I'm starting to get the picture.
Right.
It's like that feeling of being in the zone when everything just flows effortlessly, right? Exactly. I've definitely experienced that when I'm writing, and it's amazing. Time just seems to disappear.
And that's what Nguyen wants us to tap into more consciously.
Yeah.
He uses this great analogy of a muddy river
Okay.
where we try to force clarity through sheer willpower.
Yeah.
It's like churning up the mud,
Yeah.
making it cloudier.
Right.
But if we allow things to settle naturally,
Yeah.
that's when we can see through to the bottom,
Right.
to the real beauty underneath.
That's a powerful image.
It is.
So how do we even begin to cultivate that sense of allowing in our lives?
Right.
Especially when it feels like we're constantly bombarded with information and demands for our attention.
Right.
We're not all Zen masters living on mountaintops.
And Nguyen isn't suggesting we become hermits.
Okay, good.
He acknowledges that we lead busy lives,
We do.
that distractions are inevitable.
They are.
The key is to notice those moments of peace when they arrive,
Okay.
even if they feel strange or unfamiliar at first.
Instead of freaking out because things have gone quiet for a minute.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Think of it like stepping off a treadmill after a long, strenuous run.
Yeah.
It might feel odd initially,
Totally.
but you eventually realize how much calmer and more centered you feel.
Right.
It's about recognizing those moments as opportunities to connect with that deeper sense of stillness within.
Okay. I can get on board with that.
Good.
But how does this whole non-thinking idea play into something like setting goals?
Yeah.
Because to be honest, my current approach to goal setting often feels a lot like that muddy river we were talking about, just a whole lot of murky striving.
It's a common struggle, wouldn't you say?
I would.
We often set goals from a place of lack,
Yeah.
feeling like we have to achieve certain things
Right.
to prove our worth or find happiness.
Right.
And Nguyen calls these desperation goals.
If I just get that promotion, then I'll be happy.
Right.
It sounds familiar.
Exactly. And Nguyen argues that those desperation goals, while they might sound motivating on the surface,
Yeah.
often stem from a place of fear and scarcity. And because they're rooted in not enoughness, even when we achieve them,
Yeah.
the satisfaction is often fleeting.
It's like we're chasing a moving target,
Yes.
never quite feeling fulfilled.
Precisely.
Yeah.
But here's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
Nguyen proposes that when we tap into that state of non-thinking,
Hmm.
our relationship with goals shifts dramatically.
Okay.
They become less about filling a void
Right.
and more about expressing something that's already within us.
Mm.
Our passions,
Okay.
our creativity, our unique gifts.
Mm-hmm.
He calls these inspiration goals.
Inspiration goals versus desperation goals.
Right.
I like that.
Yeah.
So what does an inspiration goal look like in practice?
Think about the way children approach the world.
Okay.
They dream big without limitations.
Right.
An inspiration goal operates from that same sense of boundless possibility. It feels
Yeah.
light,
Yeah.
energizing,
hmm
almost like a calling.
It's less about striving to become something we're not and more about allowing ourselves to become who we truly are.
Exactly. And that journey of self-discovery and creative expression is infinitely more fulfilling than any external validation we might seek.
This is already shifting my perspective.
Okay.
But if non-thinking is the key to unlocking these inspiration goals, how do we, as adults who've been conditioned to overthink everything, actually get there?
Well, it's not about erasing our thoughts altogether, but
Right.
rather about creating the optimal conditions for our minds to settle,
Okay.
for inspiration to bubble up naturally.
Okay.
Nguyen provides a framework for removing what he calls thinking triggers, and this is where it gets incredibly practical.
Okay. Thinking triggers.
Yes.
Tell me more.
These are the things in our environments, both internal and external,
Okay.
that tend to activate our overthinking minds.
Right.
They can be anything from negative self-talk and limiting beliefs
Yeah.
to toxic relationships or even certain foods that impact our mental clarity.
Hold on. Are you telling me that my daily diet of coffee and self-doubt might be holding back my creative potential?
Perhaps.
Because that's hitting a little too close to home right now.
It's not about judgment,
Okay.
but rather about awareness.
Okay.
Nguyen encourages us to take a holistic approach to our mental well-being,
Okay.
just like we would our physical health.
Yeah.
What we feed our minds matters just as much as what we feed our bodies.
So it's less about mental wrestling and more about creating a space where those inspired thoughts can naturally emerge.
Precisely.
Got it.
It's about making choices that support our mental clarity and creativity,
Okay.
whether that's through meditation, spending time in nature,
Right.
or simply being more mindful of the information we consume.
So it's about cultivating a more intentional relationship with our thoughts and the world around us.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we have more agency than we realize
Okay.
when it comes to shaping our mental landscape.
Right.
And that's an incredibly empowering realization.
This is fascinating. But what about those times when we inevitably stumble, when those pesky thoughts just won't quit?
Sure.
We're human after all, not productivity robots.
Of course.
How do we navigate those challenges through the lens of non-thinking?
That's where things get really interesting. Nguyen reminds us that setbacks are a natural part of life,
Yeah.
even when we're striving to cultivate a calmer, more present state of mind.
So it's not about achieving some kind of blissful,
Right.
thought-free existence?
Exactly. It's more about changing our relationship
Okay.
to those thoughts.
Okay.
Imagine your mind is like a snow globe
Okay.
when we're stressed or overwhelmed.
Right.
It's like we're shaking that snow globe and
Yeah.
everything becomes a chaotic blur.
And our knee-jerk reaction is usually to try and force those snowflakes to settle.
Yes.
Which, as we all know, just makes things worse.
Precisely. But if we can resist the urge to control
Yeah.
and simply observe those swirling thoughts with a sense of detachment.
They'll eventually settle on their own.
Exactly. It's like watching clouds drift by.
Okay.
We don't try to control them.
Right.
We simply observe their movement,
Yeah.
knowing that they'll eventually dissipate.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But what about when those thoughts feel less like fluffy clouds and more like a looming thunderstorm?
Right.
How do we deal with things like fear, self-doubt,
Right.
those deeper insecurities that can really sabotage our creativity?
Nguyen doesn't shy away from the challenging stuff.
Okay.
He reminds us that fear is a natural human emotion,
Yeah.
especially when we're stepping outside our comfort zones, which, let's face it, is often necessary for growth and creative breakthroughs.
So how do we work with fear from a place of non-thinking?
Right.
Because ignoring it or pretending it doesn't exist hasn't really worked for me in the past.
It's not about ignoring fear,
Okay.
but about meeting it with curiosity rather than resistance.
Okay.
Remember those thinking triggers we talked about?
Yeah.
Fear can often be a trigger, but it can also be an indicator that we're onto something meaningful,
Right.
something that scares us because it challenges us to grow.
So, like, if I'm feeling terrified of pursuing a new creative project,
Yes,
it might actually be a sign that I should be pursuing it.
it could be. It's about learning to discern the difference between fear that's rooted in limiting beliefs
Okay.
and fear that's guiding us towards our true potential.
Okay, that's an interesting distinction.
Yeah.
So it's not about eliminating fear, but
Okay.
about learning to listen to it,
Yes.
to understand its message.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that fear is just a feeling, a thought,
Yeah.
and like all thoughts,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to dictate our actions.
This reminds me of that quote, feel the fear and do it anyway.
Exactly. It's about choosing courage over comfort,
Right.
trusting our intuition to guide us,
Yeah.
even when it feels scary.
Easier said than done right.
Right.
But I can see how this ties back to the whole concept of non-thinking. It's
Uh,
about creating space for those courageous impulses to emerge. Yes.
Even amidst the fear.
Precisely. And that's where Nguyen's idea of creating space for miracles comes in.
Okay, this sounds intriguing,
Yes.
but also a little, well, miraculous. How do we actually create space for miracles in our lives?
Right.
Is there a step-by-step guide for that?
Think of it less like a recipe
Okay.
and more like gardening.
Okay.
We create the optimal conditions for growth,
Right.
but we can't force a flower to bloom.
Right.
We nurture the soil,
Okay.
we provide sunlight and water,
Yeah.
and then we trust the natural unfolding of life.
So how does that translate to our mental landscape?
Right.
What are the sunlight and water for our minds?
Nguyen emphasizes practices like mindfulness and meditation,
Okay.
which help us become more aware of our thoughts and emotions without judgment.
Okay.
He also stresses the importance of surrounding ourselves with supportive people
Right.
and engaging in activities that bring us joy.
So it's about creating a life that nourishes our minds and spirits
Yeah.
just as much as we nourish our bodies. Exactly.
Yeah.
And when we create that kind of fertile ground within ourselves,
Okay.
that's when miracles can happen.
Miracles light.
Miracles don't always have to be these grand, life-altering events.
All right.
Sometimes it's the subtle synchronicities,
Right.
the unexpected opportunities,
Yeah.
the moments of serendipitous connection that remind us we're not alone,
Yeah.
that we're part of something much larger than ourselves.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's about being open to the possibility of magic in the everyday,
Yes.
even amidst the challenges.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that open-hearted curiosity,
Yeah.
that willingness to believe in something beyond the limitations of our thinking minds,
Right.
that's where the real transformation begins.
This is resonating with me on a deep level.
Okay.
But let's get practical for a moment.
Okay.
How can our listeners start integrating these concepts into their daily lives?
Right.
What are some tangible steps they can take?
Nguyen provides a framework for identifying and managing those thinking triggers we talked about earlier.
Right.
Remember, these are the things that tend to activate our overthinking minds.
Right, like negative self-talk, toxic relationships, doom scrolling on social media.
Yes,
The usual suspects.
exactly. The first step is simply becoming aware of our own personal triggers.
Okay.
What are the things that consistently send us down a rabbit hole of overthinking?
Right.
Once we've identified them,
Yeah.
we can start to create some healthy boundaries.
So if constantly checking social media is a trigger,
Yes.
maybe it's about setting some limits on our screen time or being more mindful of the accounts we follow?
Exactly. It's about making conscious choices that support our mental well-being.
Right,
And it's not about deprivation,
right.
but rather about creating space for things that nourish our minds and spirits.
So less mental junk food,
Yeah.
more mental nourishment.
Precisely. And one of the most powerful ways to create that mental nourishment
Okay.
is through what Nguyen calls an activation ritual.
An activation ritual.
Yeah.
Sounds intriguing. Tell me more.
This is about creating a morning routine that sets us up for a day of non-thinking.
Okay.
It's not about becoming a morning person,
Right.
but rather about starting our day with intention,
Okay.
clarity,
Right.
and a sense of calm.
So less hitting the snooze button,
Yeah.
more hitting the meditation cushion.
Exactly. It could be something as simple as starting the day with a few minutes of meditation journaling
Mm-hmm.
or spending time in nature.
Right.
The key is to create a ritual that helps us connect with that inner stillness
Yeah.
before we dive into the busyness of our day.
It's like we're creating a mental buffer zone,
Yes,
protecting ourselves from the onslaught of information and stimulation that can easily derail our best intentions.
precisely.
Yeah.
And when we start our day from that place of centeredness,
Okay.
it has a ripple effect on everything we do.
Right.
We're more likely to make choices that align with our values,
Right.
to approach challenges with more creativity and grace,
Yeah.
and to experience those moments of joy and flow that make life so rich.
This all makes so much sense. but I have a feeling there's even more to uncover when it comes to this idea of non-thinking and its impact on our creative lives.
You're right. There's one crucial aspect we haven't touched upon yet.
We've talked about non-thinking as a pathway to inspiration, a way to manage fear,
Right.
even a catalyst for miracles.
Yes.
But how does it actually show up in our creative work?
That's where Nguyen's concept of unconditional creation comes in.
Okay.
It's about shifting our creative process from a place of I have to a
Yeah,
place
right.
of I get to.
Okay. I'm intrigued, but also a little terrified.
Right.
Letting go of all expectations, that feels risky.
Yeah.
What if it all falls apart without those structures?
Think back to those inspiration goals.
Okay.
Unconditional creation flows from that same wellspring of passion and authenticity.
Oh, yeah.
It's about creating from a place of pure joy
Right.
for the sheer love of the process, not because we're chasing external validation or trying to prove something to ourselves or the world.
So it's like we're removing the conditions we typically place on our creativity.
Yes.
No more, if I can just write the perfect song then.
Right.
Or, my work is only good enough, IF.
Exactly. It's about releasing the need to control the outcome
Okay.
and trusting that the creative process itself is enough.
Right.
It's about silencing that inner critic that's always telling us we're not good enough,
Yeah.
not talented enough,
Right.
not worthy enough.
That's a tall order, especially in a world that often feels driven by competition and comparison.
It is. But the rewards of unconditional creation are immeasurable.
Okay.
When we create from this place of freedom and flow,
Yeah.
our work becomes infused with a different kind of energy.
Right.
It resonates on a deeper level, both for ourselves and for those who experience it.
It's less about striving for perfection and more about allowing the imperfections to become part of the beauty.
Exactly.
Mm.
It's about embracing the messiness,
Yeah.
the vulnerability,
Yeah.
the not knowing.
Yeah.
That's where the true magic lies.
Yeah. This is making me think about those moments when I'm so absorbed in my writing that I lose all track of time and self-consciousness.
Right.
It's like the words are just flowing through me. It doesn't even feel like work.
Yeah.
Is that what it's like to tap into unconditional creation?
That's a perfect example. Those moments of effortless flow
Mm-hmm.
where the ego dissolves and we become pure channels of creative energy.
Yeah.
Those are glimpses into the power of unconditional creation.
Okay.
And the more we practice non-thinking, the more we cultivate those moments in our lives and our work.
It's about trusting the process even when we don't know where it's leading us.
Precisely. And that trust, that surrender, is ultimately what allows us to create our most authentic and meaningful work.
Wow, this whole conversation has been incredibly eye-opening.
I'm glad to hear that.
I feel like I need to go back and listen to it again with a notebook in hand.
I encourage you to. These are powerful concepts that often require repeated exposure to truly integrate.
And I imagine the integration is an ongoing process,
Yes.
not a destination.
Absolutely. It's about cultivating a new way of being, a
Right.
new relationship with our thoughts,
Mhm.
our creativity, and ultimately ourselves.
Well said. To our listener,
Yes.
we've thrown a lot your way today.
I think we have.
But if there's one thing we hope you take away from this deep dive, it's this. You are more creative than you think.
Yes.
You are capable of more than you realize.
Absolutely.
And by embracing the principles of non-thinking, you can unlock a level of joy, inspiration, and fulfillment you may have never thought possible.
Beautifully put.
Ah,
It's a journey worth taking, and we're here to support you every step of the way.
this has been an incredible deep dive into the world of non-thinking.
It has.
We hope you found it as insightful and inspiring as we have.
We do.
Until next time, may your minds be clear, your hearts open, and your creativity boundless.